Imagine opening your eyes one morning to a world where two of the Middle East's most influential giants, Israel and Turkey, have not just hit pause on their relationship, but have smashed the button altogether. No more diplomatic handshakes, no more bustling trade routes, not even the thinnest veneer of cooperation. What's unfolding isn't just a diplomatic spat or fleeting disagreement. This is a profound realignment, a tectonic shift sending tremors through the delicate fabric of regional politics, global economics, and the intricate alliances that have stabilized the Eastern Mediterranean for nearly a century. But why does this matter to you? Because the ripple effects of this rupture extend far beyond smoky backrooms and political summits. They reach into the price you pay at the gas pump, the security of major energy projects, the fate of technology investments, and perhaps even the fragile prospect of peace in a region that has witnessed more than its fair share of turmoil. To truly grasp how we arrived at this crossroads, we need to take a journey through history. Turkey, a nation with a population that is overwhelmingly Muslim and a unique bridge between East and West, surprised the world stage in the late 1940s by recognizing the newly established State of Israel. In 1949, while many of its neighbors recoiled, Turkey extended a hand, establishing diplomatic ties that would, for decades, form the backbone of a sometimes uneasy yet critical regional partnership. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, Israel and Turkey built a relationship that was pragmatic, if not always warm. Military cooperation thrived. Turkish pilots trained in Israeli airspace, Israeli defense technology made its way to Turkish arsenals, and intelligence sharing became a staple of their security apparatus. In the 90s, Israeli tourists flocked to Turkish resorts, and Turkish goods filled Israeli markets. The two countries even collaborated on vital water and agricultural projects, with Israeli drip irrigation technology helping to green Turkish fields. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Turkey's identity as a secular, Western-leaning state was always in flux, and the Palestinian issue remained a point of contention. Still, it was not until the early 21st century that the partnership began to unravel at breakneck speed. The rise of Recep Tayyip Erdogan as Turkey's leader in 2003 transformed the country's foreign policy. Erdogan's vision was unapologetically ambitious. He sought to restore Turkey's influence over a region once ruled by the Ottoman Empire. This meant a more assertive stance on issues like Palestine, Syria, and the Eastern Mediterranean. It also meant, increasingly, a collision course with Israel. The turning point arrived in May of 2010, the Mavi Marmara incident. A deadly Israeli raid on a Turkish-led flotilla attempting to break the blockade of Gaza left 9 Turkish citizens dead and relations in tatters. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Ambassadors were recalled, joint military exercises were cancelled, and a generation of trust evaporated overnight. Attempts at rapprochement, including a formal apology by Israel and compensation for victims, failed to address deeper grievances. Disputes over Gaza, Syria's civil war, and rival claims to Mediterranean energy resources kept the wounds raw. As the years rolled on, the Abraham Accords, Israel's landmark normalization, deals with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, further marginalized Turkey. Where once it had positioned itself as a mediator, Turkey now found itself isolated, its influence waning as Israel built new alliances with Arab states. Ankara's criticism of these deals as betrayals of the Palestinian cause only deepened the rift. Fast forward to the present day, and the pace of deterioration has only accelerated. Since November of 2024, headlines have been dominated by a cascade of dramatic events. First, Turkey made the almost unthinkable move of severing diplomatic ties with Israel. This was not a symbolic gesture. Embassies were shuttered, ambassadors sent home, and high-level communication froze. Within weeks, Turkish security forces arrested individuals accused of spying for Israel's Mossad, broadcasting the news with fanfare to drive home the message that trust had evaporated. By January of 2025, the gloves were off. Israel's defense ministry publicly condemned Turkish military operations in northern Syria, accusing Ankara of destabilizing an already volatile region. This was an unprecedented step, as both countries had previously maintained a discreet silence about each other's security interests in Syria. The next month, Turkey imposed a sweeping trade embargo on Israel, shutting down one of the region's most dynamic economic corridors. Billions of dollars worth of agricultural goods, high-tech components, textiles, and tourism revenue vanished overnight, sending shockwaves through both economies. March brought another escalation. Israel accused Turkey of harboring senior Hamas operatives and allowing militant leaders to plot attacks from Turkish soil. Ankara denied the allegations, but the damage was done. In April, Israeli warplanes struck targets in Syria that, according to intelligence leaks, were linked to Turkish-backed militias and potentially Turkish military outposts. The international community watched with growing alarm as the possibility of a direct military confrontation loomed. May saw the Turkish parliament take an extraordinary step, passing a resolution labeling Israeli actions in Gaza as war crimes and calling for international sanctions. This was more than rhetoric. It was a rallying cry for global action, and it positioned Turkey as a leading voice in the campaign to isolate Israel diplomatically and economically. That same month, Qatari brokered ceasefire negotiations collapsed, with both sides blaming the other for intransigence. By July, Israel had moved to exclude Turkey from humanitarian efforts in Gaza, choosing instead to collaborate with Cyprus and Greece. This was a clear signal that Israel was realigning its regional partnerships, shutting Turkey out of key projects and aid initiatives. As the summer wore on, the eastern Mediterranean became a flashpoint. Turkish naval forces ramped up their presence, conducting maneuvers that Israeli and Greek officials labeled as provocative. Rumors swirled of Turkey accelerating the development of advanced missile systems, while Israeli defense planners responded by ramping up intelligence gathering and forming new defense pacts with Cyprus and Egypt. By September, intelligence leaks suggested that Turkish engineers were working overtime on new ballistic missile capabilities, sparking fears that a regional arms race was underway. October brought another bombshell. The United States imposed targeted sanctions on Turkish companies and individuals allegedly involved in supporting Hamas and facilitating weapons transfers. This move underscored the global stakes of the Israel-Turkey split, as Washington made clear that it viewed Ankara's actions as a threat to regional stability and American interests. The economic fallout has been staggering. In the wake of Turkey's trade ban, Israeli exporters have lost access to a market worth several billion dollars annually. Turkish manufacturers, meanwhile, have seen orders for Israeli technology, medical devices, and agricultural innovations evaporate. Tourism, once a robust bridge between the two societies, has withered. In 2019, more than 500,000 Israelis visited Turkey. In 2025, that number has plummeted to fewer than 50,000, a collapse of over 90%. Energy projects, long touted as the cornerstone of regional cooperation, are now mired in uncertainty. The dream of a massive undersea pipeline carrying Israeli and Cypriot natural gas to European markets via Turkey, a project valued at tens of billions of dollars, has been shelved. Instead, Israel is exploring alternative routes through Greece and Italy, while Turkey pursues its own deals with Russia, Azerbaijan, and Qatar. The result is a fragmented energy landscape, with increased costs, greater competition, and heightened risk of maritime disputes. Stephen A. Cook, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, has described the situation in stark terms. Turkey's assertive foreign policy under President Erdogan has created a complex and volatile environment, putting it not only at odds with Israel, but also with many of its former allies. Galia Lindenstrauss, a leading analyst at Israel's Institute for National Security Studies, adds, long-term strategic interests, especially in energy and counterterrorism, could eventually force both countries back to the negotiating table. But as long as personal animosities and immediate crises dominate, that prospect seems distant. Yet, beneath the headlines and the hardening rhetoric, the core conflict now is about much more than bruised egos or diplomatic snubs. It is about the looming threat of open confrontation, military, economic, and even cyber. Intelligence reports suggest that Turkey is not only accelerating its missile program, but also investing heavily in electronic warfare and drone technology. Israel, for its part, has moved to exclude Turkey from regional defense initiatives, including joint naval patrols and missile defense networks. The risk of miscalculation is palpable, as both sides test each other's red lines in Syria, the Mediterranean, and even in cyberspace. American officials have grown increasingly alarmed. The imposition of sanctions in October 2025 was accompanied by warnings that Washington would not tolerate further destabilization. European Union diplomats, meanwhile, have struggled to mediate, wary of antagonizing either side but recognizing that the fallout could jeopardize energy security for the continent. After all, Europe relies on stable Eastern Mediterranean energy routes to reduce dependence on Russian gas, a goal that now seems more elusive than ever. So what does the future hold? Most analysts see three broad scenarios unfolding in the months ahead, each with its own risks and opportunities. The first scenario is a continued downward spiral, a path of ever-escalating provocations and retaliations. Imagine more frequent naval standoffs in the Eastern Mediterranean, not just between warships but also involving fishing fleets, survey vessels, and commercial tankers. Cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure could become routine, with hackers probing energy grids, financial institutions, and even airline systems. Skirmishes in northern Syria, where Israeli intelligence assets and Turkish-backed militias operate in close proximity, could erupt into direct clashes. With Turkey's missile development accelerating and Israel expanding its intelligence footprint, the risk of a serious military confrontation is higher than at any point in the last 15 years. Regional stability would be the first casualty, and ongoing energy projects, pipelines, undersea cables, and LNG terminals could grind to a halt, impacting not just the Middle East, but also European and Asian markets. Stephen A. Cook warns, "This is a dangerous new era for the region, with too many actors and too few reliable channels for dialogue. The risk of an incident spiraling out of control is very real." In this scenario, the economic consequences could be severe. Global energy prices could spike, insurance costs for shipping would soar, and foreign investment in the region would dry up almost overnight. But a second, more hopeful path remains possible: pragmatic de-escalation. Both Israel and Turkey face significant economic headwinds. Turkey's trade ban has hurt Israeli exporters, but Turkish industries are also missing out on billions of dollars in technology, agricultural products, and tourism revenue. The Turkish economy, already struggling with inflation and currency instability, cannot afford to lose lucrative foreign partnerships. Meanwhile, Israel's ambitions to become a regional energy hub depend on access to stable, cooperative neighbors. Galia Lindenstrauss reminds us, "Strategic interests, not emotions, often shape the final outcome." If leaders on both sides recognize that cooperation in energy security, counterterrorism, or economic development serves their national interests, we could see a gradual thaw, even if it is limited and cautious. In this scenario, we might see the gradual reopening of quiet diplomatic channels, technical talks on energy transit, or intelligence sharing on mutual threats like ISIS or drug trafficking. Limited economic exchanges could resume, especially in sectors like medical technology, where both countries have much to gain. While full normalization may remain elusive, even a partial détente would stabilize markets and reassure investors. The third scenario is the wild card: political change. As Nimrod Gorin of the Mitvim Institute observes, the personal animosity between President Erdogan and Prime Minister Netanyahu is a significant obstacle to improved relations, but it is not insurmountable. If elections or sudden political shifts bring new leaders to power in either country, there could be a window for renewal. Indeed, history is full of examples where entrenched rivalries gave way to new alliances after leadership changes. The recent rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, brokered by China, is a reminder that even the most bitter foes can find common ground when circumstances change. In this scenario, external actors like the United States, the European Union, or even Russia could play a decisive role, offering incentives or applying pressure to encourage dialogue. Of course, none of these paths are predetermined. The region's history is littered with surprises, reversals, and unintended consequences. Yet, as the stakes rise, the costs of miscalculation grow ever higher. For investors and business leaders, watching these trends is not just prudent, it is essential. Israeli technology firms, which once relied on Turkish manufacturing for everything from semiconductors to textiles, are now scrambling to find new partners in Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia. Turkish exporters, especially in the automotive and electronics sectors, are seeking new markets in the Gulf and Central Asia. If you work in logistics, energy, or even tourism, understanding these shifts could help you anticipate disruptions months before they hit the headlines. The lessons for ordinary viewers are just as profound. The Israel-Turkey drama is a vivid case study in the complex interplay of national interests, leadership personalities, and global trends. In an era where economics and geopolitics are more intertwined than ever, a diplomatic rupture in the Eastern Mediterranean can send shockwaves to energy markets in East Asia or technology hubs in Silicon Valley. The story unfolding here illustrates how quickly alliances can unravel, how fragile trust can be, and how critical it is to maintain open channels of communication, even in the darkest moments. But there's another, often overlooked dimension: the role of back-channel diplomacy. Despite the public posturing and heated rhetoric, secret talks and informal contacts have continued. According to sources in European diplomatic circles, Israeli and Turkish intelligence officials met quietly in Vienna in late summer 2025. While these talks have not produced a breakthrough, they are a reminder that dialogue, however tenuous, can persist even in periods of maximum tension. Veteran diplomats emphasize that such backchannels have often prevented crises from spiraling out of control in the past. Looking to the future, the outcome of the Israel-Turkey standoff will depend on several key factors. First, the evolution of regional conflicts, especially in Gaza, Syria, and the Eastern Mediterranean, could either harden positions or create openings for cooperation. Second, the economic needs of both countries may eventually outweigh political grievances. Third, the stance of external powers, particularly the United States and the European Union, will be critical. Sanctions, incentives, and diplomatic pressure could all shape the calculus in Ankara and Jerusalem. There is also the question of public opinion. In both countries, nationalist sentiments have been inflamed by the crisis, making it politically risky for leaders to pursue compromise. Yet, as the economic costs mount and security risks multiply, there may be a growing constituency for de-escalation. Civil society groups, business associations, and even religious organizations could play a role in advocating for dialogue and reconciliation. Let's not forget the human dimension. For countless families, students, and entrepreneurs, the rupture means disrupted travel, canceled projects, and lost opportunities. Turkish and Israeli universities once ran joint research programs on water conservation, renewable energy, and medical innovation. Many of these have now been suspended, depriving both societies of valuable knowledge and collaboration. The younger generation, born after the heyday of Israeli-Turkish cooperation, is now growing up in an era of suspicion and hostility. A sobering reminder that the costs of diplomatic breakdown are measured not just in lost trade, but in diminished dreams. So, as we stand at this crossroads, the burning question remains: are Israel and Turkey on an unstoppable collision course? Or is there a chance for a reset before disaster strikes? The evidence suggests that both risks and opportunities are in play. As of October 2025, with American sanctions biting and military posturing on the rise, the risk of open conflict is very real. Yet, as history shows, even the bitterest of rivals can find common ground when the stakes are high enough. The future of the region's energy, security, and prosperity may depend on whether cool heads prevail. And here's a secret you won't find in most headlines. Despite all the turmoil, the channels for dialogue have never fully closed. Even as embassies empty and warships circle, diplomats and intelligence officers keep talking. Sometimes in shadowy hotel rooms in Vienna, sometimes in encrypted calls late at night. The hope for peace, however faint, endures as long as someone is willing to listen. So what can you do? Stay informed. Follow the developments not just in official statements, but in the subtleties of economic data, energy flows, and international negotiations. If you're an investor, monitor the impact of sanctions and trade disruptions on your portfolio. If you're a student or entrepreneur, look for new opportunities in regions adapting to the new reality. And if you're simply a citizen of the world, remember that stories like the Israel-Turkey crisis remind us all how interconnected our fates have become. If you found this deep dive valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more insights into the forces shaping global economics and technology. Do you think the Israel-Turkey rivalry will escalate into open conflict, or can diplomacy pull us back from the brink? Share your thoughts in the comments below.